And one of the really fun things about watercolor is we describe something like a stem by painting around it. And it's a different way of working, and it is not the way that your brain is used to working. So it takes some practice. And this is called negative painting. So if you wanted to practice this more, just do a Google search, painting in the negative with watercolor, anything like that. And you might find some great videos. Let's just jump right into it. I said I was going to enlargen. It's my own special word. So I'm going to mix up some green and a little bit of yellow. Once you have established a direction of light in your painting, and you may not do that right away, but I've decided light is coming from the upper left. So once I've decided that, I just want to make sure that I'm consistent in the way that I'm shading everything from that point forward. So my direction of light is coming in the same way. So I'm going to take this light yellow and I'm just going to stick this up here and make this lime a little bit bigger. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and make this other lime a little bit bigger. He's in front of that guy. That's a weird looking lime. Put a little bit of him in the water. And then, while it's still somewhat wet, I'll take some blue, darken that green, and charge it in there. So, poor Caroline is still trying to get in. I would use my phone and text her, but I don't want to touch this stupid thing. All right. So I've dropped some color onto my dry paper, and that has left me these hard edges. So I'm going to soften. So we've done one of our techniques that we learned, which was charging. I dropped that darker color right into that lighter color, and that's charging. Now I'm going to clean my brush, take out the excess water, and I'm going to soften. I'll let you in on a little secret. One of the things that's really great about watercolor, and one of the things that makes a very successful watercolor, is having both hard edges and soft edges. If you look at this lime, that's this strange little hard edge, but I like it. It almost looks like a tulip bud, which, you know, whatever. So I'm going to leave it. The challenge is to leave some of those hard edges. So I've got this coming down here, over here. Stick that lime back there. Also, I wanted to point out this lime is lower down. So he is closer to us. Anything that is lower on the paper is closer to the viewer. So my vase is the closest thing. That's why this little lime is tucked behind it. And then this guy's up higher, so he needs to be behind that guy. Oh, well, I did it wrong, didn't I? I've got this guy in front of that guy. How do I fix it? We do a lift. We're just going to take our brush and pull this lime in front of that lime. I'm using a damp brush to erase. Do you see how that works? I'm just using a damp brush and I'm rubbing the paper and trying to pick up some of that background line. Now this one looks a little bit more like it's in front of that one. I can strengthen that impression, but I can't do it when the paper's wet. So that's one of those instances where we're just going to walk away. So I hope you've done a little bit of work on popping your limes. I'm going to just soften this guy where he's coming through the vase. He shouldn't be as strong as he is in the real world. He's been dulled by all that water. And I used my brush to soften him. And if I'm not happy with that, I can use a paper towel. Okay? So that was a little bit on the limes. Now let's just come in and we're going to play in our vase a little bit. And I used predominantly, I started with the dark blue shapes, and then I came in with this darker yet shape. So we are progressing slowly from light to dark. We've already been in here twice anyway, right? So I'm going to mix up some darker blue. If I don't have a dark blue, I'm going to just take some green and mix it with the darkest blue that I've got. And then what I'm looking for here is that ellipse. A lot of the shapes that I put in, oops, wrong side, wind up being all those little triangles because I'm putting in the space between. I'll go around my little line and put it up in here. So they're almost like little wedges of color. Now, what did I say 5 minutes ago? A successful watercolor painting will have a variety of edges, some hard edges, some soft edges. So I'm going to come down in here with a damp, fairly dry brush, and I'm going to soften some of these edges. When you're doing these shapes, you want to make sure that there's a variety of these shapes, that they're not all the same size and they're not all the same shape. As I was softening, I picked up some color, so I'm just going to use that color to come up here, create a couple of more stems. So that's where we're at. Let's see. I'm going to darken a little bit along this right-hand side. And some up in this neck. And then I come back and soften. Hard edge, soft edge. And for now, I'm happy with that. Later on, we might soften some highlights from the light that's coming in. But for now, I'm just going to leave all those hard edges that are there. I'm happy enough with that. I want to do the insides of the flowers. We've darkened where the base is, where they're kind of rounding away from us, but now I want to kind of do the inside. I'm going to mix up some of my pinky color, and I'm going to make it richer. So I'm going to use more pigment and less water. And then I'm going to mix up some orange. So I've got a little puddle of orange and a little puddle of that pink, and they're pretty rich. They're not super thick. Maybe the consistency of light cream, maybe. Maybe only just milk, but you know what I'm saying? Not pasty. I'm going to clean my brush, take out the extra water, and pick up some of that nice rich pink. And I'm going to stick that right down in here. I've got the pink down there. I'm going to chuck in some orange. And then I'm going to soften. Notice when I softened, I left that silly little hard edge there. It's so much more interesting. Your painting is, the job of your painting is really to entertain, not to educate. These are not botanicals, right? Now that I've set the orange into my pink, I'm going to come back and just charge a little bit of darker color. I think I can walk away from that one now. And I'm going to move over to this guy. I am painting wet on dry. I am not dampening the paper before I come in to do this darker color. Hey, here on this left edge, I'm trying to describe what a tulip might do, right? You might see a little bit of a break between the two petals there. So I'll put that in there. And this time I'm going to soften first, cleaning my brush, using the tip of the brush to just lose that hard edge. And this time I'll just charge a little bit of orange into my pink. So charging is a really wonderful way to get the beauty of watercolor across, because most other mediums you can't do that. I just wanted to point out that I'm looking back at this first flower that I did, and it's created a hard edge here, and that's okay. It's still wet enough that I can come back with a damp brush and soften that edge. Yeah, I think that'll work. This guy could also do with maybe a little bit of a break between his petals. The interesting thing is we don't want to put that break smack dab in the middle of the flower, do we? Some of us are a bit more left-brained and we like things to be centered. And that was my little faux pas on that one. This guy up here, I'm going to make him face us. You can see here how I've kind of tried to do that. So what I'm going to do is take my orange, and I don't want him to face me spot on. Again, I'm trying not to center that little, I don't want it to be like a bullseye. Put the orange in there, soften it, and then charge in a little bit of the purple, or the pink rather. That's a cute little shape. And the last one I'm going to do this technique to is this guy over on the right-hand side. And for the benefit of those who are doing this painting, I'll choose one of these.
That's the one I'm working on.
Okay, cool. So here I'm going to maybe choose this guy right here. Put my orange into the center. He's gotten a little thin. And then charge in some of the pink. Soften that hard edge. Get a little more of this orange out. And I'll do this one. And maybe on this one, I'll just add a little bit of yellow. I didn't mix up any yellow and it's got a ton of green in it, just for an interesting little something different. And then soften the edge. So it's basically the same technique, regardless of which painting you're working on. We put the color in, we soften, and we charge. Or we put the color in, we charge, and we soften. You know, it's okay to go either direction. So this time I put in the color, then I charged the color, and then I softened. And I'll just go back to this one. I'm going to put in the pink. Sometimes I'm putting the pink in, sometimes I'm putting in the orange. It's just that ability to change things up. They're not all exactly the same. I'm just going to come down here to my vase and my limes. And to create the shadow under my limes, this is kind of an interesting technique. I'm just going to paint with water right under each of the limes. I don't know if you can see that the paper's wet down there. My light is coming over in this general direction. My water is a little bit pink, so you might be able to see it. And I'll just go ahead and paint with water right under my vase. And for my limes, I'm going to come in with a really nice dark green and hit them right at the base. So I'm kind of shading my lime and letting that shadow kind of just create itself. Push that color a little bit. That looks kind of cool, huh? And just because I love a variety of color and it's so much more interesting, I'll charge in a little bit of blue. So guess what, guys? Same technique. Soften and charge, soften and charge. Then I'll come to the top and maybe soften some of those shapes. That looks interesting. Under my vase, and this is probably the last thing I'll be able to get to show you, so don't worry if it's going too fast, I'll do another one. Under my vase, I'm going to make a blue shadow. And then, because my flowers are pink, drop some pink into it. Now that may look a little bit like a bruise right now, but remember, watercolor pigment fades as it dries. I'm going to take my flat brush now and just take some of that shadow away underneath my vase. This is dipping it in the water, taking out the extra water, having a chisel edge, and just lifting. Maybe my shadow doesn't need to come down quite this far. I'll lift it, and I'll just try to dry the paper a little bit. We'll come back and play with that shadow a little bit more. I don't like that hard edge there, so I'm going to dampen my brush and just soften it.